What's up, champ? I'm Vince Monte of GeneExpressionTraining.com. In this video, I want to talk to you guys about how to build muscle, specifically if you're skinny. And I want to tell you guys why the three big lifts, the squat, the bench press, and the deadlift, are not the best exercises for size. I know this might go against everything you've heard up until now, but I'm going to explain to you why. We're going to just dissect these exercises from a mechanics standpoint so that you can look at it from a new perspective. All right? If you're just doing things that you've been told to be true, then how do you know it's actually true? Just because something's been said a million times doesn't mean it's true. All right? And that can cost you a lot of time, a lot of frustration. So let's take a look at these exercises one by one. And the big overlapping theme here is that exercises have to be adapted to your goal. All right? We don't just do an exercise because somebody says this exercise equals this benefit. All right, because we can modify exercise to get something that we want out of it. That's a fascinating concept, right? So the first thing we always ask ourselves before we select the exercise is, what's the goal of this exercise? What's the goal? The only people that need to really do squats, bench press, and deadlifts are powerlifters, because that's a sport, and that sport requires them to do it in a specific way. There's rules, they have to go through a specific range of motion, and they must do that exercise without any variation whatsoever. The rest of us, we can adapt these exercises to our goals. Does that make sense? So for us to follow rules that aren't even set out for us, it's really silly. It doesn't make sense. All right, so that's the big perspective you have to have on exercise. Exercises must be adapted, modified to what you want to get out of it. What's your range of motion? What's your goal? What's your level of tolerance or exposure to this exercise prior to it? Or do you have the ability to even do it? So let's just break this down one exercise at a time. What are the problems with the deadlift when it comes to using the deadlift as a mass builder? Well, one, how do most people do deadlifts? Heavy. And when they go heavy, they essentially can't control the weight on the way down, so they totally ignore the eccentric portion of the movement. And the eccentric portion of the movement is where research has shown to be one of the most important aspects of building muscle. All right, so the deadlift ignores the eccentric portion for the most part if you're not doing a slow and controlled negative. Another problem with the deadlift is that the load gets dispersed through a lot of different joints, a lot of different body parts. So you might stimulate some glutes, some back, some legs, but you're not directing tension into one specific body part. Another problem with the deadlift is that you're limited by your weakest body part, which is going to be what? It's a simple one, a small muscle group. It's your forearms, right? So you're not going to get a lot of glute and back stimulation from the deadlift if your forearms are failing first. It's a great exercise to build your forearms because that's what's going to be the limiting factor. All right, so again, can deadlifts be a good exercise? Yes, there's nothing wrong with deadlifts, but for mass in a specific body part, not the best exercise in the world, all right? So we have to understand those limitations. Another thing with the deadlift is, I'll be honest guys, it's a very dangerous exercise. Even if you're doing it properly, it involves a lot of different joint systems, all right? Everything from your ankles to your knees, to your hips, to your spine, to your shoulders, to your wrists, to your elbows. There's loads getting dispersed everywhere. And I actually have a friend who has a buddy who's a coach for an NBA basketball team, and the coach forbids the athletes from doing deadlifts and squats because he knows those exercises have the highest injury potential. I know some of you guys don't like what I'm saying right now, but I'll tell you, whenever you hear guys saying, I'm hurt, I'm banged up, something's bothering me, I guarantee you it was after a deadlift session. Again, it's an exercise that takes a lot from your body, but doesn't give a lot back. All right, I know this might be new. You're like, what the hell is he talking about? Everyone says deadlifts are the king of all exercises. Guys, like I said, a lot of lies have been spread down over the decades and people don't question it with their critical thinking skills. So that's the point of this video. So let's talk about squats. A lot of the same challenges with deadlifts are involved with squats because they're almost identical movements. They're very, very similar in terms of what musculature is being challenged. The movement is almost the same except for what's happening at the trunk. So the big problem with squats is that there's a lot of passive motion. All right, a lot of passive motion. So if you watch guys on YouTube doing squats, there's very little control. A lot of guys are just literally racing to the ground and then just like using momentum to come back up, and there's very little musculature involved. But when you've got all these joint systems involved and a lot of passive motion, you're asking for an injury. You're asking for something to take the load that's not prepared, and you're gonna snap something, all right? So squats, again, can be a good exercise, but you have to be aware of its problems, its challenges. Another big thing with squats is squatting ass to grass if you don't have the right proportions. This could be one of the most critical errors that you make. Going too low into a range you can't control and you can't contract. You're asking for trouble, and you're not gonna see any gains in your quads. All right, so again, it's one of those exercises that takes a lot from your body, but it gives you very little back in return. All right, again, hey, this is from me looking at these exercises from a mechanics standpoint. So don't hate the messenger. All right, I know this stuff might be new for you, and again, I'm giving you guys new perspectives on what you're doing to yourself in the gym and what you might want to not do as much of. Lastly, let's talk about the bench press. What are the challenges with the bench press? Well, one of them is that, again, we've got a ton of joint systems involved. We've got our spine, our shoulders, our femur, the radial ulnar joint. We've got the wrist stuff. There's a lot of different joints that can play on this pressing movement, all right? And there's very little adduction of the humerus. There's very little involvement of the chest actually working. A lot of people can bench press because they've got strong shoulders and strong triceps. Those are the two muscle groups that get challenged more so than the bench press. So you want to understand that bench press does not equal chest growth. Bench press is like 25% chest growth, 50% shoulders, 25% triceps. All right, so you got to start thinking about, what am I actually trying to get from this exercise? Are there better exercises to actually stimulate the thing I want to build? If you're a skinny guy who wants to build muscle, you always have to ask yourself, what's the goal of this exercise? And the bench press is not the best way to build your chest. All right, again, not my opinion, this is mechanics. All right, so again, just wanted to offer you guys some new ideas, new perspectives on looking at different exercises that have been traditionally associated with certain benefits. And that's the problem, with this industry. People say this exercise equals this, like deadlifts equal power, squats equal bigger legs, bench press equals bigger chest. And none of that stuff is true. It's all based on how you do the exercise. That's what's going to dictate what you get out of it. So I may have said this a million times already. I'm going to say it once more. The exercises you do in the gym need to be modified based on what you want to get out of the exercise, which requires you to always ask before you begin your exercise, what is my goal? What is the goal? Is it to stimulate muscle tissue, or is it just to move something from point A to point B? All right, once you can answer your question of what's my goal, then you can now modify the exercise to serve you, all right? That's how you approach exercise selection, all right? No more selecting exercise because so-and-so it's the best exercise, or this magazine said it's one of the top 7. It's all just headlines, guys. So that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to let me know what you want me to cover in future videos by leaving a comment below. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And if you haven't taken my muscle fiber type quiz, click that link above me. It'll take you to a page to figure out what your core fiber type is, which means you'll learn how to work with your genetics, how to program your reps, your sets, your rest periods, all those critical details to your body, not your buddy's, not mine, to yours, which is very important if you want to build muscle in less time. If you're on your phone, click the first link in the description box and you can take the same quiz. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you again next time. Peace out.